Well, how can you not be romantic about football? That's a feel-good story for all sides. And I do not care for you if you are somebody who's going to try to talk down on Jake Moody. He's a human being. He struggled with the 49ers. Everybody understands that. He got a change of scenery. He went to the Chicago Bears, and on a windy, wet night in Washington, D.C., Jake Moody kicked the winning field goal, had 4 makes. He even overcame some adversity after the block, and he won the game for Chicago on Monday Night Football. They even interviewed him after, and how could you not feel good just from the sense of humanity? There are a lot of trolls online. There's a lot of negativity online. I watch sports for the competitiveness. I watch sports for the people. I watch sports for the resilience, the stories, and Jake Moody winning that game for Chicago deserves a salute. I would venture to say that 99% of the people watching have not encountered the type of the type of adversity in their professional lives that Jake Moody encountered with the 49ers as an NFL kicker with that kind of pressure cooker, and then to come back from it, to keep on working, to go and kick a game winner for the Chicago Bears. That was pretty cool. And you know what? Things work out for all sides. On the same weekend that the 49ers returned to Tampa, where the Moody nightmare really got going in full speed for the 49ers last year. That's where the whole Deebo Samuel, Tabor Pepper incident was, and Deebo Samuel happened to be on the losing team today, so Jake Moody beat Deebo Samuel's team. That's crazy to me. But who's writing these scripts, right? Who is writing this script? We got more. There was a lot of other 49ers related stuff that happened today, but the 49ers were in Tampa yesterday. That's where all this got started, right? 3 misses against Tampa for Jake Moody last year. And then he made the kick to win the game. So the Jake Moody roller coaster experience was alive and well. And it finally ended after the torturous game against the Seattle Seahawks in week 1. And the 49ers replaced Jake Moody with Eddie Pinheiro, who just yesterday made 4 kicks to pass Justin Tucker. I mean, Justin Tucker, that's the name that we all knew over the course of the past decade as the best kicker in history. Eddie Pinheiro passed Justin Tucker in all-time field goal percentage, and he's now the 49ers kicker. So the 49ers obviously had to move on from Jake Moody, and it appeared that Jake Moody had to move on from the 49ers. He needed the change of scenery. He benefited from the change of scenery. You've got to feel good for him. And just from the kicking aspect, you've got to feel good for the 49ers because they've landed Eddie Pinheiro. And it just so happened, Mike, can you send me the video of Eddie Pinheiro talking about Jake Moody the other day? Because Eddie Pinheiro and Jake Moody were actually talking like just a few days ago ahead of this week. And Eddie offered his best to Jake Moody. He predicted that Jake was going to have some NFL success down the road. And looks like Eddie is correct about everything these days. He's correct about all his kicks. He's 15 of 15 for the 49ers. And he was right about Jake Moody being able to succeed in his next opportunity. Now, obviously, Jake's got to show consistency moving forward. This is not something to say that he's got to figure it out for the rest of his career. But this is just something to appreciate a moment when the moment happens. And that was a moment out on that field tonight. I mean, they were doing everything in Washington to get into Jake Moody's head. Did you guys notice when he was taking his warm-up kicks as the Bears were driving that they put Moody onto the scoreboard? I mean, you never see them put the kicker onto the scoreboard as he's going through his warm-up kicks. That was certifiably wild. I think this video is from Matt Lively. Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but we can watch some Eddie Pinheiro on Jake Moody.
So you got to make kicks, and at the end of the day, I'm just tired of everybody talking about Jake Moody. I talked to him the other day, and you know he's a great kicker. I messaged him the other day, and you know he's going to do well in this league, and he just had a bad stint here, and sometimes you just need a fresh start, and you know he's got my support, and he's going to do well.
Eddie, your 59-yarder might have been good.
That is Eddie Pinheiro. That was before he made the 4 kicks against Tampa Bay. Again, 15 out of 15. The guy's an absolute machine. It's been really fun to watch Eddie Pinheiro pick. And, we can expand this to a larger discussion about the 49ers special teams unit. I even got into this a little bit in the San Francisco Standard when I wrote my grades for the game. I'm going to toss these up onto the screen right now. Special teams for the 49ers, and this is mainly thanks to Eddie Pinheiro, added 6.7 expected points. Here we have it, and you could see Pinheiro up on the screen. 6.7 expected points for the 49ers on special teams. The Moody Nightmare game, week 1, the 49ers lost over 10 expected points on special teams. So nearly 7 gained. That was a 17-point EPA swing on special teams alone between what they put on tape in the loss against Tampa Bay versus what they put on tape in the win against Seattle. Make it make sense, right? The 49ers won the game where Jake Moody imploded against the Seattle Seahawks, and he was cut a couple days after that. And they lost the game where they got Eddie Pinheiro 4 for 4 for them in Tampa Bay. Of course, that there was the horrific news of the Fred Warner injury yesterday. Mike, do you have the Fred Warner Instagram post? I think we should put that up on the screen. We could talk about that. That was the bad news that hit the 49ers yesterday that obviously they're going to struggle to recover from. They're going to do their best to recover from it. But the next game is against the Falcons. Today was a wild 49ers connected day. Did you guys notice the first game, the Falcons are going to be the 49ers' next opponent. They upset the Bills. They not only upset the Bills, they absolutely dominated the Bills. They rushed for over 200 yards. They were at 6.8 yards per carry. Bijan Robinson is a problem. Drake London is a problem. Michael Penix Jr. Was thrown accurately for the first half of the game, and then toward the end, he almost tried to give it back to the Bills. Josh Allen was very, very frustrated on the sideline for much of the game, and the Falcons held on. I don't think that the final score was indicative of how uncompetitive that game was. I mean, whenever you could run for 6.8 per carry, it means that you're just whipping the opposition up front. I know there was an 83-yarder in there, but it counts all the same. The Falcons are going to be very, very hyped entering their Sunday Night Football showdown against the 49ers coming up this Sunday. But the Falcons, aside from beating the Bills and doing that in convincing fashion tonight, they've also lost 30-0 against the Carolina Panthers. So the big question is, which Falcons team is going to show up on Sunday Night Football? I think the 49ers have actually been fairly consistent this year. I don't think there's been a big performance change from game to game for San Francisco. It's just really dependent on who's been healthy. And even when they've got big injury problems, the 49ers have found a way to fight in all these games. They haven't been blown out of the water a single time. But for the Falcons, it's been Jekyll and Hyde. So it's going to be really interesting. The last I checked, the 49ers were 3-point favorites against the Atlanta Falcons. And I would not be surprised if that spread changed this week just based on the hype that we do expect the Atlanta Falcons to get. In fact, I'm taking a look right now to see if there's already been a shift. It's going to be a fascinating test of perception as the 49ers get ready to play Atlanta on Sunday. Anyway, that Falcons-Bills game, we talk about all the 49ers connections today. Jake Moody actually was blocked by Javon Kinlaw of Washington, the kick prior to his game winner. That immediately goes into the ex-49ers content Hall of Fame. Javon Kinlaw blocking Jake Moody. Then Jake Moody turns around to beat Deebo Samuel's team, not the 49ers, but Deebo Samuel's team at the final gun. I mean, what a bonanza, right? As Joe Starkey would say. The first game to finish today on Monday Night Football was also a 49ers special teams extravaganza. You had Mitch Wishnowsky, former 49ers punter, punting for the Bills. And on the other side for the Falcons, you had Bradley Pinion, who was the 49ers punter to begin the Kyle Shanahan era for 2017 and 2018 before the 49ers drafted Mitch Wishnowsky out of Utah in 2019. So 2 former 49ers punters going at it in the first game. In the second game, you had Jake Moody versus Javon Kinlaw blocking him and Deebo Samuel on the field. And, of course, the ex-49ers brass with Adam Peters and Washington. And you also, by the way, had, I don't know if you guys caught this, of course, Luke McCaffrey, Christian's younger brother, playing for Washington. So there's a 49ers connection. But on top of all that, Jeremy McNichols. Now, this is a little bit of a blast from the past and might not be somebody that you remember, but Jeremy McNichols had a couple different cups of coffee with the 49ers, starting with their practice squad back in 2017. Actually, active roster. He was promoted to the active roster in 2017, brought back actually as depth to the active roster in 2023. And Jeremy McNichols picked up a huge first down late for the Commanders in this football game. But then they fumbled the ball away, and that set up Caleb Williams and DeAndre Swift to drive down the field and set up Moody for what was, I thought, a really cool moment. And I think if you've got any compassion, humanity in you, then you thought that was a cool moment as well. Because it's not like the 49ers are worse off right now. They can wish Jake Moody the best. The 49ers are better off right now with Eddie Pinheiro and Jake Moody. You know, that change of scenery is a real thing. We go back to 1994 when the 49ers used the third-round pick on a kicker. Yes, the 49ers used a third-round pick on a kicker in the Super Bowl season, like the last time they won a Super Bowl in 1994. The kicker's name was Doug Bryan. And Doug Bryan ended up flaming out for the 49ers. In 1995, they cut him because he was struggling. Doug Bryan went on to have a 12-year NFL career, highly successful kicker, and, you know, all was well that ended well, right? The 49ers won the Super Bowl in 1994 when Doug Bryan was still on the team. The 49ers still saw a lot of success later in the 90s, even though they didn't win the Super Bowl. Doug Bryan, I'm sure, made plenty of money as an NFL kicker over the course of the next decade plus. And the lesson to be learned there was that, you know, so much of this is psychological, mental for these kickers. Doug Bryan just needed a change of scenery to mature as a kicker at the NFL level. The 49ers had drafted him out of Cal, and that did end well for him, and the rest was history. So in the case of Jake Moody, and this has happened with different kickers around the league, this isn't the first time that a change of scenery will have yielded some success. Everybody knew that he has physical talent. Like he showed that in college. He showed that. Caleb Williams was interviewed after the game, and he said, to be honest, I had no idea who this guy was, because when the 49ers played the Bears last year, Jake Moody was he back? Yeah, I think, Moody was already back at that point. So Caleb Williams still didn't pay attention to who the kicker on the other side was last year. But Moody came into Bears practice and drilled a 65-yard field goal. He had been on their practice squad, and he got the activation for this game. So after he made the 65-yarder, everybody in Chicago said, all right, he's got the physical talent, which is what the 49ers knew. I mean, obviously, he's got physical talent to use a third-round draft pick on him. And it was just a matter of turning that into performance when the money was on the line in an actual game. And so the Bears trusted Jake Moody today. He did miss one. He kicked it too low, but that was the block for Kinlaw. That was all part of the NFL script. I mean, somebody's got to be writing this, right? How could Javon Kinlaw block Jake Moody and it be an accident? That it just is crazy to me. It's mind-numbing how many different 49ers connections we saw tonight. But after the block, he came out there and he drilled, what was it, a 38-yarder to win? So he made a couple or three from over 40, near 50. I think one of them was 48, was blocked from 48, then made the 38-yarder to win the game in some adverse conditions. You know, I saw the relief on his face during the post-game interview. One of the best quotes that Jake Moody had today was, "You're only as good as your next kick." And, the same thing's going to apply to Eddie Pinheiro too. And Eddie talks about it a lot. Eddie's a great interview. He talks a lot about, if I don't make kicks, I'm going to be out of here. It's how it works in the NFL. And, this year, Eddie Pinheiro has leapfrogged several kickers on the all-time list. Let's find this all-time list for you guys. NFL all-time field goal percentage list. It's on Pro Football Reference. So starting this, here's Eddie Pinheiro right now. He's highlighted. Starting this season, he was down at number 6, and he's now at number 2 at 89.4%. Now, the only way that he passes active guys is if he makes his kicks and other guys miss some of their kicks. Harrison Butker was ahead of Eddie Pinheiro up until last week. Harrison Butker's missed 5 times this year. Justin Tucker's not playing right now. He's suspended. So Eddie Pinheiro's just had to be perfect to pass Justin Tucker, because if he does miss, that's going to negatively impact his percentage, and he'll probably fall back down under Justin Tucker. Cameron Dicker is a new appearance on this list because it takes a minimum of 100 attempts to get on there. Nobody's been better by a long shot in NFL history than the Chargers kicker Cameron Dicker through their first 100 plus or so attempts, 94.6%. But anyway, other guys have been missing. That's my main point. Like guys like Butker, who seemed automatic there for a couple of years, have been missing, and the misses seem to come in droves for these kickers. It just shows you how cerebral, mental, psychological, whatever you want to say this is. I mean, everybody is hitting that certain threshold of leg strength and ability to do this from a technical standpoint, but it's the ability to repeat it consistently that seems to be challenging for some of these kickers. And right now, I think people should enjoy the hot streak that Eddie Pinheiro is on. It reminds me a little bit of Robbie Gould back in the 2017, 2018 seasons. He was on a real heater for the 49ers. And Gould, we go back to the all-time list here. Robbie is 10th all-time, 86.5%. That's really good, because the art of kicking, the technique of kicking gets better and better over time. Cameron Dicker is raising this up to a whole new level. Justin Tucker raised it up to a whole new level during his prime with the Baltimore Ravens over the 2010s. And now Eddie Pinheiro has a chance. I mean, if Cameron Dicker misses a few times, maybe Eddie Pinheiro will have a chance to close that gap, but it still is a 5-point gap between Pinheiro and Dicker. But Robbie Gould, for doing this starting in 2005, that's a really nice percentage. How about Mike Vanderjagt? Started before even Robbie Gould, from 98 to 06, making 86.5% of his kicks. It is a weird art form, that's for sure. Unusual, but what we saw today, I thought, was worth talking about today. So we're going to talk about 49ers Falcons. Earlier today, I talked about the 49ers injury report. George Kittle is going to be back for this game against Atlanta. You know, Atlanta today impressed me in so many different ways. It looked like they had Josh Allen all out of sorts. He was throwing some dangerous passes for the Buffalo Bills, and I know that he hadn't been perfect the week before when they lost to the New England Patriots. The Bills are now 4-2. You know, the Bills have the same record as the 49ers, and the 49ers are a team that, you know, everybody now is just seems to be writing off completely. I don't look at this as like, oh my God, Super Bowl or bust. This was never a Super Bowl or bust kind of year for the 49ers. This was a year where you wanted to see San Francisco put out a competitive product that allowed the torch to really be passed to some of the youngsters that they drafted. They kept the core, but they added onto it with a youth infusion. And I think that anybody who's constantly focused on just one end goal is bound to be disappointed, because only 1 out of 32 teams win. I understand the 49ers fixation on that in seasons like 2022 after they traded for Christian McCaffrey, and 2023 when they had an absolute super team. But more often than not, you're not going to be in that kind of position in the NFL, just how the salary cap works and how the league is set up. More often than not, you're playing to try to get into the tournament, and then you hope that the greasy bounces go your way. And that's exactly where the 49ers and 98% of teams are right now. Like, you could argue that a team like the Buffalo Bills might be a little bit more wired like the 2023 49ers. But as you've seen here, the Bills have now lost 2 straight, including 1 at home, 1 here on primetime against the Atlanta Falcons. The Bills have plenty of weaknesses. I mean, the Bills, you can't tell me that's a super team at this point when they just gave up 7 yards a pop on the ground. That game was not as close or as competitive as the final score would indicate, up until the garbage time drive, which ended in another Josh Allen interception. Buffalo was getting outgained by 200+ yards. It was like 7.2 yards per play for Atlanta. The 49ers defense got absolutely scorched yesterday by Tampa Bay. They gave up 7.0 yards per play. So what Atlanta did today against the Buffalo defense was more robust than what the Bucs did against the Fred Warner, Nick Bosa-less 49ers defense yesterday. They completely scorched them. And now that Atlanta team's going to have all the hype coming into Levi Stadium. But the second that people buy into the overwhelming hype of one team is the second that they're going to be shocked about the result on any given Sunday. Because, again, the Falcons that we saw today, the same team lost 30-0 to the Carolina Panthers. What we're actually seeing is that the league, I think, is completely perfecting its formula of parity. And we're seeing more parity than almost ever before. I'm going to go to the point differential. I think ESPN has a good point differential chart in their NFL standings. And point differential usually will give us a good idea of team strength. Now, one crazy thing is that the 49ers have been actually defying a lot of the point differential so far this year. Like, you would expect them to have a worse record than their point differential would indicate. Look at this down at the bottom in the NFC West. The 49ers have a negative point differential, -3. It's over in this column. And they're the only team in the NFC West with a negative point differential. Yet the 49ers, if the season ended today, they'd be NFC West champions. So that kind of gives you an appreciation for the clutch games that the 49ers have been able to pull out, because they have not been a great team, especially analytically, but they have found a way to deliver at the very clutchest moments. And that comes even though they lost 10 expected points on special teams when Jake Moody was their kicker, by the way, back in week 1. But the Seahawks have the highest point differential in the NFC West at +49. The Rams are at +30, and the Cardinals are at +3. So if you're saying that point differential is the most predictive of a team's success over the long run, you would say that the Seahawks are the NFC West favorites. But that obviously doesn't account for who the 49ers might return injury-wise. And even though they have lost Fred Warner, they're planning to return a lot on the offensive end. So I think this division is still going to be very, very interesting. The NFC South only has one team, even though the Falcons today with the win, their point differential is 0, 100 points scored, 100 points against. Only the Bucs are in a positive point differential in the NFC South. So it's +14 for Tampa, and even 0 for Atlanta, -14 for Carolina, who beat the Atlanta Falcons by 30 points, and -49 for the New Orleans Saints. Moving up to the NFC North, look at that. That's a crowd at the top of the NFC North. The Packers have the fewest losses because of the tie to Dallas, but they're at +29. The Lions by point differential are better. The Vikings are at +26. I think the NFC North and the NFC West are in a very, very firm, close race to be considered the best divisions in football. They both have 3 positive point differential teams. The difference is that in the North, the Bears, who are the one negative point differential team, are in last place, despite the win tonight. The 49ers, the negative point differential team in the NFC West, are in first place. But it's still early, so this is all going to get sorted out. Only the Washington Commanders, who lost tonight and therefore are in second place behind the Eagles, have a positive point differential in the NFC East. This is just a masterclass in parity in the NFL. Do you guys see what I'm showing here? Even the teams that should be theoretically in first place because of the strength of point differential at this point don't seem to be in that position. Like, only one of the NFC divisions has the point differential leader actually in first place, and that is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 5-1. But here you've got the Commanders +32. The Eagles are -1. The Cowboys are right behind the Eagles in terms of differential, but they're 2-3 and not 4-2. So what the league is doing is it's clearly setting up a product that has a lot of flips in very tight games. That's the only way the teams with low point differentials are able to have good records in the NFL. On to the AFC West, 3 teams at the top, but the Raiders are terrible, -46 point differential. However, again, the division leader is not the leader in differential. The Broncos have a +35. They're in second behind the Chargers at +2. The AFC South looking strong except for the terrible team, the Titans, -78. But it's +78 for the Colts, who beat the Cardinals the other day. They are actually leading their division. Now, the Bengals, we were talking so much about Trey Hendrickson and Miles Murphy in the trade market. The Bengals are -80 in point differential. That is worse than the Titans. That is the worst in the league. yet they're still in second place because this division is so bad. So the Bengals play the Steelers, who are the only ones in the positive at plus 12 on Thursday night. The Bengals with a point differential worse than the Titans are still in second place at 2-4, albeit with 4 straight losses. I would really, really hope that they're in sell mode after they lose on Thursday night. And then finally, AFC East, New England and Buffalo tied at plus 30. That's crazy. At the top, and the Dolphins and the Jets, they aren't very good. -40 and -47. The Jets -47, 0-6. They definitely have not won any of those close games. So anyway, if you want to preview 49ers Falcons, it's the -3 49ers point differential against the Falcons, who are at 0. So it's fairly evenly matched. As of right now, 49ers are 3-point favorites, but we got to figure out who's playing quarterback for the 49ers. Falcons have 14 sacks already on the season. They only had 31 all of last year. So through 6 games, they are almost halfway to where they were last year. So the pass rush has definitely improved. They've got Leonard Floyd now on that Atlanta team. David Onyemata, the former Saint, is now with the Falcons. Fun stuff happening in Atlanta, especially with that offense. You know, that offense for the Falcons is Michael Penix Jr. does not move well. Okay, I would go as far as to say that he's a statue. But if the 49ers can't pressure him, and they only had 7 pressures with their defensive line against Tampa Bay, he's going to be able to play 7-on-7 football, kind of like Baker Mayfield was for the majority of the game. I don't want to take away from the 3rd and 14. That was crazy for Baker Mayfield. But let's be honest, the 49ers did not pressure Baker nearly enough on Sunday. And if they can get Drake London into rhythm with time for Michael Penix Jr. and then obviously Bijan Robinson with the way they ran the football, I mean, this 49ers defense is going to have a chance to regroup. A little bit of a longer week than the Falcons. They're going to have a chance to figure out how they're going to strategically attack life after Fred Warner and Nick Bosa. But it still is life after Fred Warner and Nick Bosa. And I think that the Atlanta Falcons are going to have a chance to put up some real yardage and points, which goes back to what we know that the 49ers formula is going to be. And that's ball control, hog the ball. With the Falcons playing, I mean, they blitzed Josh Allen aggressively in this game. Even if Allen's not getting away from it, you know that he was really, really surprised. The 49ers are going to have to pick up the blitzes better than they did this past week against Todd Bowles, and maybe they're going to need some more mobility to quarterback. We'll see if Brock Purdy is ready to go for San Francisco. We should go to Ben Baldwin's site and check out the team tier chart. I don't think that this game between the Bills and the Falcons is accounted for yet in the team tier chart, but all of Sunday's activity is. And as you can see here, the 49ers have dropped into firm average mode. They're right there with the Cardinals. They're right there with the Eagles. The 49ers have more players scheduled to return than the teams that they're next to, but this really just shows you the parity around the league. Teams near the 49ers are the Bears, the Chargers, the Falcons, who they play, the Jags, who they already played, the Cardinals, who they edged out, the Panthers, who are coming in for Monday Night Football in a few weeks, the Steelers. We're going to watch them against the Bengals. The worst teams in the league are the Bengals and the Titans over here in the corner. The Jets are the 0-6 team, but they've been a little bit more efficient than the Bengals and the Titans. The Raiders are really bad too. The Browns are bad. I mean, the Raiders beat the Titans, though. They got Brian Callahan fired. The Ravens, funny to see them in the bottom left, but that defense has fallen off a cliff and Lamar is hurt. Dolphins aren't any good. Your goal is to be further to the right and further up here. And, right now, the 49ers defense is just struggling to prevent a free fall. If you only looked at the last 2 weeks, 49ers defense has been about where the Dolphins logo is. The defense is on the vertical axis, the y-axis. The offense is left and right. So San Francisco needs to keep this from free falling vertically, and then they need to get guys back and move to the right, and then they can deliver some noise. I've made a bunch of videos today. I wrote the article on the San Francisco Standard. For the 49ers, it's, I think you look at this on a week-by-week basis. Anybody who wants to give up on the season is a loser, right? That's a losing mentality. That doesn't belong in the NFL. You don't know who's going to suffer a catastrophic injury or two elsewhere in the division or the conference or the league next week. This is a violent sport. You keep on fighting until you don't have a chance anymore. And if you have a loser's mentality, then you're not cut out for football. It's point blank. I hate to be mean about it, but I'm just being honest about it. I see so much talk from people who follow the 49ers or fans of the 49ers. I'm just objective. I'm not cheering for this in either way, but I'll just call out a loser mentality when I see one. I mean, you're in week 6, moving on to week 7 in a super unpredictable league where you've already seen the 49ers notch a massive upset over the Los Angeles Rams playing a skeleton crew on prime time. And you're talking in absolutes as if the season is over when the 49ers are still scheduled to return the player at the most important position at quarterback, who was an MVP finalist just 2 years ago. When you're scheduled to return George Kittle, I mean, you can't make up some of this defeatist mentality that I see around here. It's pathetic, and there really is no place for it in a competitive sport. You strategize, you can mourn the loss of Fred Warner, and you should, because Fred Warner is awesome. And what a gut punch for the 49ers. And yes, their odds are much longer now without Fred Warner, because he's a future Hall of Famer. He's such a good player, but you don't just pack it up and leave. You go and play the Falcons next week. That's the intrigue of all this. I could see the 49ers going 3-0 over their next 3 before the Rams come to town in early November. I can also see the 49ers going 0-3 over the next 3 before the Rams come to town in November. I see pathways to beat the Falcons and then beat the Texans after that, and then the Giants after that. And I also see pathways to lose to all 3 of those teams. You know why? Because the league has mastered the formula of parity. Here you can see it. Like, let's see the next opponents. The Falcons are a tier above the 49ers, but just barely, right? So Falcons and the 49ers basically along the same diagonal line. So you got 2 teams, plus the 49ers have good special teams now with Eddie Pinheiro, so that gives them a boost. They gave them a touchdown boost, which basically knocks you into a different tier. They got a touchdown boost the other day against Tampa Bay. Who's after that? The Texans. The Texans are up here. Texans are actually a full tier and a half above the 49ers, despite the fact that their offense has been sketchy this year. But the 49ers have been playing backups on offense, so it's been sketchy as well with some of the run game and the protection issues for San Francisco. So, I mean, the Texans, I would favor them over the 49ers at this point, right? But we'll see where the 49ers are at health-wise in 2 weeks when they go to Houston. And then the New York Giants, well, a lot of people are laughing, oh, New York Giants, sellers for sure. They go out and they beat the Eagles soundly. They're only a tier below the 49ers. So you just shrug your shoulders, and you could see the pathway to 3-0 or 0-3 or a combination thereof for the 49ers. And I think that the league has got the product right where it wants it to be, with there being so much uncertainty. Anyway, fun night. It was cool to watch all those 49ers connections, the 2 punters in Buffalo, Atlanta, the Jake Moody extravaganza, obviously. Javon Kinlaw blocking Jake Moody before Moody hit the game winner. Jeremy McNichols special. It was a cool night of football, and you've got to feel happy for Jake Moody. If you don't, then you probably have no soul, and you should reevaluate your life. Anyway, Jake Moody is ordered or owed. I don't know if he's ordered another apology. I'll order it. But Jake Moody is owed another apology. That one aged well. Pretty funny. We'll talk to you guys later.